All right. So I want to share with you a different assessment than we did last week. Last week we did a couple of range of motion assessments where we looked at the neck range of motion. This time I want to do trunk range of motion. So if it you can stick with one of the assessments that we did last week, and I will show you those again, but if it feels okay to you, maybe stand up. This might be a good time to stand up anyway. Always helpful to kind of move our bodies when we're learning new things. And so with this particular assessment, what we're going to do is I want you to find a spot on the floor that you are going to remember because you're going to come back to this spot, feet like hip width apart. And then essentially what we're going to do is we'll put our hands out in front of us and just watch me for 1 sec. My feet are staying in the exact same spot, but the rest of my body is going to move. So I'm doing what's called a trunk rotation. And as I'm doing this, do it a couple times nice and gentle, and just notice where your hands are landing in the room. So again, taking a range of motion assessment. Where are my hands landing in the room? Okay, awesome. And then as we know, what we're looking for is a bit more range of motion because that means that our nervous system is going, heck yes, I love this input. It's doing for me what I need it to do. So we're going to talk peripheral vision training. This is a really simple way that we can bring our system back to homeostasis. We can create more presence and groundedness. Our visual system is so important, top of the neural hierarchy. If there's anything off in our visual system, it can create more stress. We can be filling that threat bucket, the water level in the threat bucket can be going up and getting close to the top without us even understanding why, if there's stuff going on in our visual system. And again, as that threat bucket water level rises, it can affect our sleep. And so here's what we're going to do. Essentially, want you to just like have your hands out of your like main center of vision. And then what we're going to do is on each side, I just want you to start at the bottom, looking straight ahead. I want you to bring your left hand, sorry, you can't see me. I want you to wiggle your fingers and bring your left hand into your field of vision and then bring it out, keeping your eyes forward, just noticing when your wiggling fingers come into your field of vision and then back. And then we're going to come up and do it at the top and just notice. And then up here, just paying attention to when our fingers come into and keeping eyes straight forward. Then we'll do both hands at once. I'm going to just let my arms be short for a second, but you can have yours coming out. We're going to wiggle our fingers, looking straight ahead, seeing our fingers come in and back. Perfect. Standing, we're just going to take a breath in through our nose, out through our mouth, making sure we're in the same spot as we were before. Let's do another trunk rotation and see if our nervous system liked that. How did we do with that one? Did we get any more range of motion? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Was it
A
bad?
little bit.
Little bit? Little bit? Okay, perfect. So this is one that we can do kind of while we can do it sitting at our desk, gives our visual system a little bit of a break. Um, and you're training your visual system in this moment as well. We know that visual system is one of the most important inputs for the nervous system. So the more we can train it, the more we can decrease the threat coming from our visual system and get us out of an activated state or even move us out of dissociation if that's something that we're experiencing. When our visual system is off, it can create anxiety under the surface. If you get that kind of underlying anxiety, you're like, why do I have this anxious feeling right now? It can often be caused by our visual system. As well, we can experience things like being off balance or that kind of feeling of ungroundedness or having trouble being present in the moment. Okay. Whitney, you weren't on the email where I said if we could bring a paper towel. Chelsea, did you happen to remember to bring a piece of paper towel?
No, but I can grab one really
Okay.
quickly.
Yeah, if you can grab one, let's do it. All right. Okay, so we're gonna play a little bit with our tongue. I know, it's like, what? What are we doing? So again, with all of our applied neurology tools, what we're doing is we're helping our nervous system create more safety without having to think about it. The more we can create safety, lower threat level in our brain, the more we can rest, the more we can sleep without having that hyper arousal either wake us up or keep us awake when we wake up in the morning. So, kind of incorporating these drills, the ones that work for us, the ones that our nervous system is happy about, thinking of them almost like things that we do similar to brushing our teeth or making coffee in the morning or whatever it may be, the more we can kind of incorporate the ones that are working for us, either during a stressful moment or during those moments during the day that kind of create that habit, we can start to improve our sleep because of lowering that hyperarousal and threat level. So with this one, we're working with cranial nerve 12. This is the lowest one in the brain stem. So as I mentioned last week, our brain stem is responsible for sleep. And so we were working with the brain stem in this case. This is the easiest place to start, kind of gentlest place to start. So I'm just going to grab my paper towel too. And so when we work with our cranial nerves, we're also really improving our ability to make change, interestingly enough. And so these are nerves that go directly to our brain. They have a lot of power over our brain activity. And they're a really gentle way typically to come back to homeostasis. So what we're going to do is just do a tongue pull. So do another assessment, maybe this time because we're sitting again, just do like our shoulder assessment, kind of noticing where your arm is in relation to your ear, keeping your head straight, not tipping your head toward your arm at all, just kind of noticing, or we can do shoulder adduction, noticing where our hand is landing in space, see if we can get any more range of motion in our shoulder. Okay, and then we're simply going to, watch me first, I'm going to grab my tongue and pull gently. So we're going to pull enough to get a little bit of tension. We're going to hold it for 5 to 10 seconds. If you start to, if it hurts, back off the pulling and just breathe. Okay. So we're going to do this together and I will count us for, we'll do like 10 seconds. Ready? You might even experience while you're doing it, possibly a little sigh. You might feel your shoulders start to come down a little bit. That's good. Awesome. So stop, take a breath in through your nose, out through your mouth, and then let's reassess. Oh, I like that face. Whitney, did you get you got some more range there? Yeah. Yeah, I got some more range in my shoulder too. So, simplest way to explain that is essentially your nervous system saying, heck yes, I like that. It activated an area of your brain that created more safety, less threat. I do this, it's our water level going down in our threat bucket. Okay, so I'm going to share one more quick tongue drill. This is one you can do driving in your car and like wherever you're most comfortable. But it's a really accessible drill that we can do. I do this when I'm out on walks. I do it sitting on the couch. Yeah, anywhere. So this one is tongue circles. So watch me first. You're going to keep your mouth closed when you're doing it, and then you're going to basically take your tongue and circle it around your top teeth and then your bottom teeth. I know it looks kind of funny, but we're going to keep our mouth closed. We're going to go 3 times in one direction, 3 times in the other direction. Each time you go around in a circle, kind of think about reaching further and further back with your tongue. Once you've done both directions 3 times, take a breath in through your nose, out through your mouth, and then let's reassess. And if you want to, you can stand up and check your trunk rotation again. Oh yeah, mine liked that one. Next week, we'll talk about a couple of other assessments we can do in terms of vocal tone and breathing and that kind of thing. We'll stick with range of motion this week. How did we do with that one? Did we notice any change? Yeah, a little bit. All we're looking for is a slightly positive change. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be. I typically get quite dramatic on the trunk rotation. With my cranial nerve drills, it just depends on you. Every nervous system is different. It's just like our fingertips, right? Or fingerprints, I should say. Yeah, so we're just looking for that little bit of positive reaction from our nervous system. If we get neutral, it means maybe we can ramp it up a tiny bit. If we get negative, we back it off a bit. And that's all we're looking for. All right. Hang on a minute. Okay, so I want to just, for the last little bit that we have here together, and I will share one more drill at the end if we've got time, but I want to span out so we can see how sleep struggles aren't just a sleep hygiene issue. Because I know a lot of the time we can look at that checklist that we looked at before, and, yes, there are probably some things that we can be working on there, but we can also look at that and go, okay, I'm doing all these things, maybe not every single day, but I'm doing them quite well. And I don't know why, I don't know what's going on. And so, like, why am I still not sleeping? This is often the question that I get. And so there are structural and societal issues that affect our ability to wind down and rest and ultimately get a regular solid night's sleep. And that ability, a bit easy for me to say, the inability to rest or wind down is definitely exacerbated by societal pressures that glorify productivity. You know that we now live in a world of constant connectivity. We talk about this all the time, right? We're on much more of a like time crunch. Technology keeps us available all of the time. We're on our screens a ton. We have nervous system activation depending on what we're taking in through our screens. And that makes it really difficult to shift and modulate our nervous system into that parasympathetic state that we need, that rest and digest that we need for recovery and winding down. And when we can't modulate, it also impairs our cognitive function, our decision making, our emotional regulation, right? So we have a really tough time being in performance mode or being present and or making like big lifestyle changes that we want to make that feel more aligned with the way that we want to live and who we want to be. So when I'm working with my private clients on high performance, helping them adjust their lifestyle to be more in sync with their biological clock is definitely key to performing better at work, at home, in their relationships. And we also have to understand that there's beliefs at play here, right? As it relates directly to sleep, we're going to talk about that, those sleep beliefs a little bit more next week. But we know that hustle culture, it saturates our society, and that structural forces and societal norms, they really embed themselves in our neural architecture and our beliefs, and they shape how our nervous system responds and how we can fall asleep at night and stay asleep. And that influences not just our beliefs, but our behaviors and really the physiological reactions that are happening inside of us. And that impacts which state we stay in throughout the day and whether we can come down from an activated state. Okay, so beliefs playing a really big role here. Pressure to do more can come from things like trauma responses, like perfectionism and our inner critic. And yes, those are trauma responses. They are nervous system outputs, and they can lead us to feel safe or, pardon me, unsafe winding down at night. And same thing can also come from chronic stress load and sensory overwhelm. You think about, something like maybe the education system or even our like office environments or schedules, right? And they're often designed for a very neurotypical brain and nervous system. And so different brains digest information and process those sensory inputs that we talked about earlier, our kind of interoception, exteroception, proprioception, right? Those sensory inputs get processed differently, which can then lead to overwhelming states and really this kind of chronic stress load that we carry. So you remember we talked about the language of the nervous system. So those sensory inputs, right? Everything from our internal sensations to our vision, our balance, our hearing, our smell, and also how our brain identifies kind of where our body is in space. Interpretation of safe or unsafe, and then output, right? That's how the nervous system works. And so our ability to wind down, rest, and sleep can also stem from issues with interoception. So essentially, that kind of those internal signals, our emotions, our heart rate, our like whether we're hungry or not, nausea, self-awareness, things like tension, joint and muscle pain. Do we have to go to the bathroom? Are we thirsty? Right? All of these things kind of fall under that umbrella of interoception. And when we're interpreting those internal signals as threatening, or this is a bigger piece, even especially for women, we're not hearing them at all, then we end up pushing past the signals for rest and recovery. And so the more we push through those, the better we get at pushing through them. And then we create an environment for that hyper arousal, right? Or that overactivation. Remember when we talked about wake drive and sleep drive, right? And the behaviors that cause us to be hyper aroused, we end up doing that again and again, even though they don't necessarily benefit us. So it's important to create safety around noticing and interpreting these signals accurately and with clarity, and then being able to take action that aligns with what our body is telling us. So we started to do that with our little kind of bite-sized moments of rest that we talked about last week, and our vagus nerve drills, working with our tongue that we just did, working with our vision. These are really fantastic ways to train our interoception, or essentially like those internal signals, and getting to know ourselves and our signals again, and also really building trust, and then being able to take that aligned and resourced action. Because when we don't have sufficient recovery time for rest and repair, what happens is we can't get better at dealing with stress, right? We can't positively adapt to the stress that's around us. And that becomes really unsustainable. And we end up with longer term health consequences. So we're not just talking about being tired or waking up in the middle of the night. We're actually talking about the bigger pieces of like burnout and functional freeze and maybe immune issues, right? So the other things that are kind of going on with us that can affect our sleep are, the constant kind of mobilization and activation of the nervous system from interactions with the world around us. You think about like our work stress, filling the stress bucket up, right? And then we deplete our stress response system. And all of this affects our internal state and our health. If we can't hear those really subtle signals that are coming from inside of us and then paying attention to them, they will just get louder and louder until it's not just sleep challenges that we've got, but we've got other strong outputs like pain and migraines and immobility and stuff like that. So what we're doing together here is learning how to interrupt that cycle. So I know it's funny when we do things like, pulling on our tongue and playing with our vision, but what we're doing in those moments is interrupting this cycle so that they're essentially those we're using these new inputs so that our brain starts to go, oh, okay, this is safe, and it can get more accuracy and clarity in its interpretation, and then produce a different output. And we talked about right off the top, sleep is an output, right? So that's why we're doing these things. And as we interrupt this cycle too, we're really dismantling these kind of social norms, which is really critical for our nervous system health. I really think that there's activism in questioning the hustle culture and the social norms that we have been brought up in. And we can bring a different way of being into the world when we start to allow space for um, time to rest. All right. So challenging the norms that say we must always be on really is radical, and it requires capacity. It can feel super threatening to go against them. So we want to resource our nervous system to take actions. Again, that's what we're doing as we kind of build capacity with our tools and other things, but being able to do that with a really kind of low cognitive load method can be super important in a like less threatening way of going about that. So without that, we're going to end up getting into the burnout phase. We're going to have crappy productivity and all of the other things that we talked about. So bringing this specifically back to sleep, all this structural and societal stress compounds and directly impacts our sleep because we're in that constant state of activation. And sleep is when our brain repairs, our emotions are processed, our memories are consolidated. So it's really important for us to acknowledge too that like when people struggle to fall asleep or get quality sleep, there's sometimes a disconnect between what their nervous system is ready for and the habits they know they should implement. So this is what I mean when we talk about practical sleep hygiene, like reducing screen time and limiting caffeine and getting that early morning light. It can feel sometimes almost impossible or unsustainable because of that constant nervous system dysregulation. So you can see how this is a vicious loop, right? Um, and so just a couple more things that are at play that I want to address so that we are aware of them, because once we have this awareness, then it's like we can't unsee it, right? And then we can start to notice, okay, this is what's maybe at play for me here. This is what I can, start working on bit by bit, little micro shifts at a time. So if we've been relying on survival strategies or habits, which this is what they are survival strategies. If you're, doing things like numbing out on social media or using substances for regulation, it's really hard to just flip the switch on those. Changing them requires the capacity to go against these kind of social norms that we talked about. And that's where our brain-based tools come in again. So these are practical ways to create regulation and give the nervous system the inputs that it needs to create those internal states that support our bigger goals, our bigger lifestyle and habit changes. And we're using them to interrupt this cycle and introduce new inputs that will gradually reroute those patterns over time. And so that basically means that they help our brain interpret things more clearly and accurately and stop seeing rest and restful sleep as a threat to our survival. I know it sounds so counterintuitive, like we know cognitively that these are good things. They're not threatening, they're actually super helpful. But our nervous system is what's driving us here. And what's embedded in our nervous system are beliefs created by hustle culture, trauma responses like perfectionism. That's what's ultimately driving our actions and how we end up being physiologically, right? So again, another loop. So maybe it's 3 to 4 minutes of a wind down practice to help regulate the system. Maybe it's getting a bit of morning sun to reset that circadian rhythm, starting with like 5 minutes, 3 minutes, step out your front door, step out onto your patio, like try and make it a very small bite each morning, and you will gradually start to build on that, right? Moving away from light in the evening, right? We find the most productive kind of feasible changes and let them build so that we're more in sync. Our sleep drive is aligning to our biological clock, and it's really supporting this kind of essential part of our health. And I want to acknowledge too, before we wrap up, that sleep is um so like it's really vulnerable. There can be big triggers for some of us as it relates to nighttime. Our body remembers things that our mind does not. So if nighttime was a hard time for you ever, whether as a child or going through adolescence or even now, right? Your body remembers that. So if taking action to better yourself ever produced more kind of negative results, your body remembers that. If you were ever forced to slow down when you didn't want to, so maybe because you got sick or someone else got sick and you had to care for them, whatever it was, your body remembers that. So we work slowly with this stuff, even with the tools. We've got to be gradual. We always use a minimum effective dose. And that's why we always do the assess, reassess with everything that we do, because we want to make sure that it's working for our specific nervous systems. All right. Again, a lot of information. So let's just, before we wrap up, do one more drill together to kind of bring us back into kind of a lower threat, help our brains come back online, or not back online, but really stay in that kind of executive functioning so our memories can be consolidating what we just learned. So what I want you to do is take a breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And then I know you had it in your mouth, but you can use your paper towel or something else nearby that's soft and easy and accessible. So I'm going to grab my paper towel. And again, just breathing naturally. And we're going to do one more cranial nerve drill. This is cranial nerve 7. And all we're going to do is we're going to trace a number 3 on our face. So first, let's do one more assessment and see where we are now. Maybe use a neck rotation this time if you haven't done one today. So sitting up straight, shoulders straight, and then just gently moving your neck from side to side and noticing where your eyes are landing in the room. And then I want you to take your cloth and gently trace over the eye, over the cheek, and over the jaw in the shape of a 3. And we're just going to do this like 3, 4, or 5 times on each side. Cranial nerves bringing us back to homeostasis. So if we're activated, it can help bring us down, going over to the other side. If we're feeling dissociated or disconnected, can actually upregulate us, help us get a little bit more energy back. Just breathing gently. Perfect. Once you've done that a few times, breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. And then let's reassess. How did we do with that one? Thumbs up. Awesome. Okay. We've got just a couple of minutes. Were there any questions about any of the drills or any of what I shared today? Again, you can always pop into the WhatsApp, but I just want to, if there's anything that's coming up for either one of you.
Like, how often are you doing these things a day?
Yeah, great question. So, our neuro tools can be used for a couple, so 2 different reasons. So what we want to do is start to pay attention, and this is what we did last week, is starting to pay attention kind of when you feel activated, like you're in a bit of a stress response. So you maybe are going into a stressful situation, or you find yourself in a stressful situation. Your heart rate is kind of high, your stomach maybe isn't feeling great. You just notice that you're off. You can then use a drill as a almost like a rescue tool. So any drill that had a positive response for you, we're going to use as a rescue tool in those moments where we want to shift our state. So we're never using them to suppress emotion. If we're really angry or we're really sad, we need to process that. But we can use our drills to create safety in that moment and kind of shift out of an activated or dissociated state so that we can then deal with the emotion or deal with what's happening in that moment. So that would be one instance. Then the next kind of piece of that is nervous system training. So this is why we use the assess reassess process, because we don't want to, it's like, okay, if I have a headache, I'm not going to take the whole bottle of Tylenol because I know Tylenol works for me. We're going to take one, see how we feel, then 4 hours later we're going to take another one, right? It's kind of the same thing, like minimum effective dose. So we want to use the tools, kind of the ones that we know work for training our different systems. So if we know we've got some visual stuff going on, we can choose a time during the day. Maybe it's in between meetings if we've got that kind of thing going on. Maybe it's um, heading into at the end of the day when you've finished work and you're like, okay, I want to transition and go be with my partner. I want to transition and go to the dog park and not be all wound up. Like, so I'm going to do a drill kind of as I transition between the different phases of my day, at which point you're then kind of like in training mode with your nervous system versus them being a rescue tool. How does that fit with it? Does that make sense? I hate saying, does that make sense? Does that, though, make sense? Do you need more clarification on that? Yeah. Okay. Anything else? All right. All right. Thank you for being here for week 2. We will see you in the WhatsApp group. If you haven't joined already, then pop in there. I'm sharing daily stuff, more neuro tools, and different prompts that we can use throughout the week as it relates to the theme of the week. And I will see you next Thursday.
Thanks, Rebecca. Bye, Whitney.